me warm in the cold of the night.
My name is TessaLuna Lluvia, and I am a former family law attorney, and Amber is a criminal psychologist. And together we are taking on these Innocence Project cases. Now, that does not mean that every case we do, we think that person is in fact innocent, because sometimes, in our opinion, we feel they are guilty. Now, I want to put a disclaimer in this video before we even get started that these are our opinions and that we are not stating our opinions as fact. You yourself can go online and research for yourself and draw your own conclusion. On November 12, 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his wife Laci and unborn child Connor. He was sentenced to death and is currently on death row at San Quentin Prison. In part one, we talked about when Laci goes missing, and if you missed it, I will put it in the description below for you to go and watch before this one. Today we will be talking about Amber Frey and her relationship with Scott before and during Laci's disappearance. On Christmas Eve 2002, Laci goes missing and everyone rushes to help to try to find her. But in the public eye, Scott seems evasive and not interested in helping the search. Actually, he acts more like he is avoiding the media than trying to get the media involved in trying to help locate his missing wife. But regardless of that, there was no evidence on the case that pointed to Scott from either the home or the warehouse except a single strand of Laci's hair found in a pair of pliers. But that could have come from transfer off Scott or even Laci being at the warehouse herself. Scott met Amber in November of 2002, 5 weeks before Laci disappeared. Her friend introduced them and Scott told Amber he was not married. He did attend a Christmas party with her as her date, and from there the relationship went forward quite quickly. On December 9th, Scott does eventually confess to Amber that he had in fact been married, but that he had lost his wife, and this would be the first holidays without her. 15 days later, after he told Amber that he lost his wife, Laci goes missing. 5 days after Laci's disappearance, Amber finds out through a friend that Scott has been lying to her, and she notifies the police. The police go to her house to interview her and find out that Scott has been having an affair with Amber and ask Amber to record their phone calls, and she agrees to do it. Their first of many recorded calls start on December 30th, 2002. On December 31st at 3:05 p.m., Scott calls Amber to wish her a Happy New Year and lies about where he is. He claims he is in Paris, France, near the Eiffel Tower, and comments about how huge the crowd is. He then tells her he misses her and he will see her soon. Scott was actually at a vigil for Laci. After that, the recorded calls continue. In the meantime, the police and divers are searching the Berkeley Marina and San Francisco Bay because they felt that is where the bodies would be found, because that is where Scott said he was fishing. He was also looked at as maybe being involved in the Kristen Smart case only 2 weeks into the investigation, so they are already insinuating to the public that Scott is a killer. So no wonder public opinion started swaying in the direction of guilt from the beginning. Then, on January 25th, 2003, the news conference starring Amber Frey as Scott's mistress aired. And everyone at that point who was already suspicious of Scott was sure he was guilty now. If you're interested in hearing more, just keep on listening. Okay, so in part one, we talk about the media getting involved and how Scott was avoiding the media and didn't want to be seen on camera. And we didn't know then why he was being so evasive, but we do know now. Introducing Amber Frey. Wow. So we've got a girlfriend. So here's the thing
that I didn't understand about the whole Amber Frey thing. And I understand why people are like, why didn't it come out sooner and why didn't we know about this? Because it went so far into the investigation. And until January 25th, they didn't even bring Amber out. And that's only because the story had leaked. They actually were trying to keep her hidden. So here's my question. What made Scott even think, and before we talk about how they met and everything else, what made Scott even think that it was okay to cheat on his pregnant wife, Amber? Let's address that first before we even get into the whole thing, because I know that's going to be most people's question is, what? A pregnant wife, and why even cheat? You've got a baby on the way. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility that you have at home. What makes you think that you have time to cheat or even could get away with it?
So we're looking at this relationship from the outside, and of course, many people are asking the same thing. When people found out Scott had a woman on the side, of course, the first thing they're going to be saying is like, well, are you crazy? She's pregnant. And I know we're going to address this in a little while, but it's not like he had Amber for a long time. He started seeing Amber right at the end of Laci's pregnancy, which makes it look even worse. Now, that's a good question. Why would a man want a girlfriend when his wife is pregnant? And here's the thing. Some psychiatrists believe that a man starts to cheat when his wife is pregnant. And there could be many answers for this. One is that he is no longer getting the same attention as he was before. The relationship is different now. The relationship is not only about them going out having fun, she's pregnant. The relationship is now focused on their unborn child and getting ready to start a family. So the relationship dynamics are different.
Okay, and that makes sense. I've always said that a man feels like the attention strays away from him and is now, her attention is all on the baby and having the baby, and he kind of feels like he gets lost. But you would think, Amber, that he would be just as excited as the baby coming, but instead it almost looks like he thinks it's more of a replacement of him. Now she's going to be focused on the baby. She's not going to be focused on me. But, it's crazy because he told his friends and even Amber that he didn't want another child. He didn't want a child at all. He didn't have a problem taking care of somebody who already had a child, but he did not want a child of his own, and he said that. Now, why do you think he would say something like that knowing that Laci hadn't even disappeared yet and that she was pregnant?
It is very interesting to me where it is apparent he is not interested in a family. And I know we are going to talk about this in a little while, how he's romancing Amber. I know you and I talked about this before, is he is interested in being a ladies' man, pampering new, young, attractive women. It seems to me he prefers this behavior. He pampered and romanced Laci, but now she's pregnant. And it just seems that his behavior is different now. You would think he would be romancing her still, even though she's pregnant and preparing for the family, but it seems to me his behavior is different. He no longer is interested in her.
And what's crazy is in front of, and we talked about this before too in part one, but in front of family and in front of friends, he did pay her attention, and they looked at him as a very, very loving couple, a couple that other people would want to be or even be jealous of. And so apparently in front of friends and family, he did show her that type of attention. So I'm assuming that it's behind closed doors that he didn't and felt like he needed to go get his own attention from someone else.
Absolutely. I think you're correct on this because he was having an affair. Amber came forward, and he started the affair late in her pregnancy. I know detectives during this case, an investigation into Scott, that this wasn't even his first affair. And perhaps to me, it seems like maybe his behavior is more interested in the chase. He is a ladies' man. Maybe he's interested in attracting new attention from young, attractive girls. This could be the case. And once he has the woman, like he did with Laci, and then she's pregnant, it is no longer exciting to him. And perhaps maybe that's why he was seeking affairs.
So to him, maybe Laci perhaps looked like, oh no, this is my life now, because once a child becomes involved, a man almost feels stuck. Like, I can't just leave her for another woman. I'm stuck now. And that is definitely a possibility. Okay, so Scott meets Amber through a friend in November of 2002. Now, November, that's 5 weeks before Laci disappears. Now, Scott told Amber he was not married. And he actually went on a date with her to her own Christmas party that she threw, while Laci went to a Christmas party by herself. And of course, those pictures are online that you can see, and I'll put them right here on the screen so you can see them as well. But he does eventually confess to Amber that he was in fact married, but that he had lost his wife, and that this would be the first holidays without her. Now, this is on December 9th that he tells her this. Now, let's look at when Laci disappeared on Christmas Eve. So you're talking 15 days after he tells Amber that he lost his wife, and this would be the first holidays without her. A big coincidence happens, and Laci goes missing. Now, what do you think about that, Amber?
I remember seeing an interview with Amber, and she speaks about this. She said she asked Scott if he was all right. She assumed he was talking about that his wife died. So he lied to her. He lost his wife, and yes, this isn't true. He was still married, and he did not lose his wife yet. She asked him if he was all right, and she asked him if it was okay for him to have a relationship, and he said yes. I'm wondering if he was put in this position because the man who introduced Scott to Amber, apparently, from what I saw in an interview, was the same one who confronted Scott about being married. This man found out that Scott was married and threatened Scott to tell Amber he was married, in a round to tell her about his wife, or else he would tell Amber. So Scott had no choice to make a confession to Amber. But he had to do it in a roundabout way. He didn't want to lose Amber's attention and affection. He still wanted to have an affair with her. So I'm assuming he came up with a lie, that he was married and he lost his wife. Amber assumed that he was saying that his wife died, and she was sympathetic because Amber seems like a empathetic woman. At least that's how I perceive her through the interviews. And maybe Scott liked the idea that she was sympathetic and empathetic towards him, feeling sorry for him in a way. And perhaps that was making her a little bit more closer to him because she wanted to comfort him.
Now, when they did a recent interview with Scott, and a lot of people have been making documentaries on TV about Scott, and they did do an interview with him, and he said, when asked the question, why did you tell Amber that you lost your wife, he said, well, there are different kinds of losses. So he's saying that he never actually told Amber that his wife was deceased. He simply told Amber that he lost his wife, and he's saying now that he meant that he was in a lost relationship, like he was married, but they were emotionally lost toward each other and just going through the emotions. So him and his mind couldn't leave his wife because she was getting ready to have a baby. Now, if you ask Scott's and Laci's family, they're all going to say this is BS because Scott loved Laci. They were both excited about the baby. But again, like we talked about in part one, in front of family can be completely different behind closed doors. So I don't think that this is an admission of guilt. It does sound crazy that he told her that that, and then his wife goes missing. It's insane that that even happened. What a huge coincidence. But if he is being honest and was meaning that he emotionally lost his wife and that they aren't really together, and at some point he intended on telling Amber or even divorcing Laci but waiting till after the baby was born, that's a big possibility. But man, Amber, that is a huge coincidence.
Yes, it is a very huge coincidence. Now, somebody like Scott can twist his own words around in many different ways. Yes, I lost my wife. It could be many, many meanings. I lost interest in my wife. We were both lost. There was no passion. Our relationship was empty. Of course, he's going to twist the words around a little bit. And unfortunately, Amber took it one way. Scott says he said it in another way. And yes, you're right. What it all comes down to is Laci went missing on Christmas Eve 15 days later. And that is a big coincidence.
That's insane is what it is. That could not happen twice in a row. Okay, so 5 days after Laci disappears, Amber finds out through a friend that Scott has been lying to her. So what does she do? She calls the police. Now, here's my question before we get into what she told the police and all that. Why didn't Amber find out sooner through news and etc.? Well, she claims that she's not a news person. She claims that she doesn't really read the newspaper. But I'm telling you, Amber, you know as well as I do as a woman with a man, if you are dating somebody and you're serious about somebody, girl, the FBI is not as good as a woman who wants to find out about her boyfriend. So I find it odd that she said that she cared about him so much, thought he was the one, but she did no investigation on him. She was like, oh, let me see if he really works here. Nothing. You just trust everything he tells you. And there's this huge, even Nancy Grace is covering it, and you know nothing about it. I'm guessing that's true because when she did call the police, she did sound stunned, but wow, I just find it so hard to believe that this is the man that she's dating so seriously, and yet she didn't know all this was going on.
Yes. Now, let's remind people who are listening to this video. The Scott Peterson case happened in, I believe, 2002. Okay, yeah, 2002. So this is not in the age of Facebook and Twitter yet. Most people in this time, yes, will watch Nancy Grace. They will watch their favorite news network, whether it be CNN or ABC. And this case was all over the television. I, for one, do not watch a lot of television. You know, I'm more of an internet person. But again, this is 2018. Most people get their news online now. Yes, it is a little surprising to think, very naive, that this woman is not curious yet about her boyfriend. However, she's also a single mother of a young child. I'm sure her life evolved around her child, and maybe she was trusting of him. You know, she thought she met a very nice man. And of course, when she called the police, she was very shocked about everything that the police was telling her. Very surprised. Of course, we can look at her in different ways. She's naive. She was romantically attached to Scott. She didn't find any reason not to believe him.
Okay, well, I'll buy that. We weren't really into the whole internet thing then, but, she had friends. I feel like the friends around her kind of knew. She had enough friends that could kind of tell. But, I wasn't there. I don't know. Maybe they all thought Scott had told her and she was going through the motions and just weren't telling them. And that's quite possible. Okay, so Amber calls the police and says, hey, I heard about this guy named Scott Peterson with a missing wife, and I'm dating a fertilizer salesman named Scott Peterson who says he lost his wife. Do you think there's any connection there? So the police drive to Fresno to sit down and have an interview with Amber, and they decide that she's telling the truth and that this is really happening. So they ask her to record her phone calls, and she does. Now, the calls actually started on December 30th, but the very next day on Christmas Eve, Scott calls Amber to wish her a Happy New Year. Now, he is at a vigil for Laci when he calls her, and he tells her that he is in Paris at the Eiffel Tower and how huge the crowd is. Now, Amber, I'm stunned at this. I mean, why call her at all? Why make up this elaborate lie? Why not just call her later and basically talk about nothing? Why make this huge lie about how huge the crowd is, blah, blah. He's with his friend Pascal. He's doing all this great stuff, blah, blah, blah. Why, Amber? Why?
You know, that's a good question, because this lie is absolutely ridiculous. He could have told her, you know, I'm busy. You know, a more common lie is that he's working. I'm working late. I'm busy with work. I can't talk to you right now. But yet he has this weird thought to call her saying that he's in Paris. He's trying to get Amber to think she's the only one in his life. Why wouldn't he bring her to Paris? And why would he be with his friend in Paris? He could have brought her to Paris.
Well,
you see what I'm saying? This is like bizarre. This is a bizarre lie.
He told her initially around, I think it's right before Christmas Eve, that he was going to Paris with his family, and that was going to be his excuse for not having to see her, because he knew he'd be around. See, this is another thing that makes me question guilt or innocence, because if you needed to make up an excuse of why you couldn't see her on these days by saying, hey, I can't see you on Christmas Eve, or I can't see you on Christmas because me and my family are going to Paris, and I'll be there and not here, and the reason I can't take you is because I'm going with family. And she even asked for an address in Paris to send him a Christmas gift, and he gave her a post office box in Modesto and said, if you send it here, they'll forward it to me to Paris, which she thought was just so weird. I mean, why even go that length to talk about forwarding mail? But if he really thought that he was going to kill Laci on Christmas Eve, why wouldn't he be able to spend time with her on Christmas and everything else? Unless if he was guilty, and he said, and I'm not saying guilt or innocent because we're not done with it yet, but if he was guilty, he might be saying, okay, I'm going to use this time, Modesto's small, I'm going to use this time to wrap everything up, kill Laci, get everything together, and then he tells her, let me say this, he tells her on a phone call that after December 26th, he was like all hers, and that they could be together after that. So why say that? So kill her on Christmas Eve, deal with it on Christmas Day with the police, and then the day after Christmas, he's free to date her? I mean, the whole thing just doesn't seem like enough time. The whole thing just seems so ridiculous. So I'm lost. I get so lost in this part of it because it can go two ways. Either you tell her that because you need that time to kill your wife and you think it's only going to be wrapped up in 2 days by the police, and then you can be with Amber, and then maybe you can tell her the truth and hope she'll still be with you after that. Or he really thought he had to spend the holidays with Laci and her family and really wouldn't be able to see Amber, and he didn't kill her at all. So I don't know. I'm lost on that.
Yes, this is an interesting contradiction here. Let's just say, for right now, one scenario, Scott did kill Laci on Christmas Eve. He lies to Amber about being in Paris because he wants Amber away from him right now, so he can deal with the police and having her missing, dealing with Laci's family, telling her family that he's missing. 2 days is not enough. You know this, T. You know, you worked with the law enforcement. Who in their right mind will just think, oh, I'm going to deal with the police for 2 days, and the police will be out of my hair?
Right.
Okay, no, it doesn't make any sense. You know, you deal with the police for weeks and weeks and weeks sometimes when a person is missing, depending upon the scenario, of course. You know, it is odd to tell Amber a P.O. box number when really, if you're going to be spending the holidays in Paris, you're going to have to book a hotel room way in advance. Paris is a hot destination for the holiday season, and you would already know the address of the hotel. So yeah, Amber should have known he was lying.
After they talk to Amber, or while they're talking to Amber, and they're setting up all these recording phone calls, and she's talking to Scott, and all this is going on, the police and divers are actually searching the Berkeley Marina constantly. They're looking for the body of Laci because that's where Scott said he went fishing. So they're constantly over there looking. They found no evidence in the house. They found no evidence in the warehouse except for the black hair that was in the pliers that was consistent with Laci's hair, and what they said was anchor dust, where it looked like he made 5 little anchors, and there were 6 little anchors and 5 were missing, and so on and so forth. But you can't prove that because you don't see the anchors. So, and they find nothing during that time, mind you. But they also look at him as being involved in the Kristen Smart case. Now, this is where I think the investigation just went more wrong than it ever could. Up until now, I felt like things were pretty legit and mostly what they should have done. The worst thing they could have did is looked at him into other cases and made it public that they were looking into other cases. They could have done that privately and not told anybody. But the fact that they made it public that they were looking at Scott for other missing or murdered girl cases just made him look like he was more guilty. Okay, and if you don't know who Kristen Smart is, you can look it up online, or me and Amber might cover it at some point, but it's just a girl who went missing after a college party, and they were actually looking to see if her and Scott had any of the same classes together when he went to college. So I don't know if they knew each other, but they were looking to see if they did in any way. So I think by putting that out there publicly, they're basically telling the public that, hey, yeah, we not only think he murdered his wife, but he may be a serial killer. What do you think about that, Amber?
Not a very good idea. You and me both know this is actually very common. When a police department has a suspect, of course, what is the first thing that they do? They take a look at cold cases. They take a look at patterns, coincidences, to see if this suspect, could be a suspect for another case. Yes, this is fairly common practice. However, I do not think it is a good idea to get the public involved for more than one reason. Of course, the first reason and foremost is what you were talking about. It puts a lot of misinformation and pressure on the current case. You know as well as I know that if a family whose family member died and they don't have a suspect and they hear the public talking about this public information, oh, well, we might have a suspect for you. We're looking at Scott Peterson. That family has false hopes. But it is not fair to lead wrong information on the suspect because it causes too much misinformation. It causes a lot of confusion. They're going to make the public believe these two cases are related when it's prematurely thought. It could lead to a lot of mess, and it's unnecessary, in my opinion.
Right, because you got to think, you got people that are on the fence going, well, maybe there's an explanation, maybe he's not guilty, maybe he didn't kill his wife, and then you have the police saying, well, we think he might be involved in the Kristen Smart case. Okay, now you've got these people that thought there might be a chance he was innocent going, oh no, if the police think that he might have killed others, then maybe he's guilty. So the police are already swaying people's suspicions about Scott just by the misinformation that they're putting out there, and that turned out to be nothing. It turned out he didn't even know her. They didn't have classes together. It wasn't even related, and so they did all of that, and we don't know how many people still believe that that's a part of it just because they're thinking, well, if the police believe it, and that's the police, then maybe I should believe it because they wouldn't put something out there that was misleading. That's the police. You know, so I do feel like that they did sway public opinion just from that alone. And so people who may have thought, oh, you know, he might be innocent are now thinking, wait a minute, he could very well be guilty. And then on January 25th, a full month after Laci goes missing, Amber Frey comes out of the woodwork to the public as Scott's mistress. Now, police have already swayed a lot of people into the guilty direction. Now, if they didn't think he was guilty then, they do think he's guilty now, because she basically came out and said he lied to me, told me his wife was lost, blah, blah, blah. We did have an affair, blah, blah, blah. And she basically put it out there. So now people are like, well, this dirty, rotten scoundrel, now we know why he killed his wife. Because think about it. This whole time that the police were like, Scott did it, it doesn't make sense. People saw her walking her dog. People were on the fence. Then they started talking about Kristen Smart. People were thinking, well, the police must know more than they're sharing, that he's a killer. And now he's also a cheater. So we didn't have motive, and now we have motive. He wanted to be with Amber. So now everybody is like, he is guilty, and they don't want to hear about anything else. They don't want to hear that another woman went missing, and basically the same thing happened, and she was basically found in the same way 6 months earlier. There were people that saw Laci walking the dog. There were people that could give Scott an alibi. There were people that 100% think he did not do it, and there was no evidence that he did. But because of everything we just talked about, 90% of people are like, he's guilty, that's it, I don't want to hear nothing else. What do you think about that?
Amber comes forward. She says, I am his lover. We had an affair. And people take a look at this situation. Scott's wife, Laci, not only is missing, she was 8 months pregnant. Those who felt bad for him now see he was cheating on his pregnant wife with this beautiful woman. There's going to be a lot of people angry at Scott now. There's a lot of people who do assume he had a motive of getting Laci out of his way so he can be with this young, beautiful blonde woman. They're going to automatically assume that this was his motive, that he's a guilty man, and, you know, yeah, he's a dirty, rotten scoundrel.
So here's my question, Amber. In your opinion, why do you think Scott waited so long to tell Amber that Laci was missing? Why not just tell her after it happened and before she saw it on the news, before her friend showed it to her in the paper, before it went crazy on Nancy Grace? And why not just say, hey, Amber, look, I do love you. When I said I lost my wife, I meant emotionally lost, and you might have took that the wrong way, and you may not even want to be with me now if you find out that I'm still married and with her. But look, I have to focus on finding my wife. I have to focus on what may have happened. I need to know what's going on, and I cannot focus on our relationship right now, and I hope you understand. Now, Scott says in a recent interview that it was to keep the focus on the investigation and not him cheating. He was scared if people found out about Amber, they would put all the focus on him as a suspect and not look for the real killer. Now, that's what he says. Now, what do you think?
It is really odd for me to look at this thinking, did he ever think Amber was not going to find out about the truth? Did he ever assume that Amber was just going to be left in the dark? I'm sure it surprised him that Amber went behind his back and called the police. You know, did he think the police was not going to find out about Amber? Or all his other affairs before her? It's very interesting. Maybe he thought he was going to get away with everything, that he had more control over the situation than he did, and it was probably maybe making him worried in the back of his mind that he was losing control. It seems to me he was trying to keep a lot of things under control, but he just couldn't.
Another thing I was thinking of is maybe he thought, again, Modesto's a small town, Fresno's a small town. My wife is going to go missing, but nobody gives a hoot about me and my wife. So this is going to go local news only. I'm going to have to deal with the local police, but it's not going to go further than that. And I think the reason that it did go further is not only because she was 8 months pregnant, but there's a lot of pregnant women missing. I think it's because it was on Christmas Eve. And mind you, had it happened any time other than Christmas or Christmas Eve, I'm not so sure it would have got out to the media like it did. But because it happened on a specific large holiday, I think that is why it skyrocketed like it did. And had it not, he might have got away with her not finding out. It's very possible if it stayed very, very local, because I know about thousands of missing person cases that another person would be like, oh, I've never heard of that. Well, no, because it's local and, it happens every day. And, yeah, but I think because it happened on Christmas and she was pregnant is why it went so far like it did. The news channels were looking on something to report on, and this was it, and they ran with it. And that's what I think happened. Now, if he's innocent and he didn't tell Amber, it could be because he thought Laci would be found and everything was still going to stay as he had it planned. If he's innocent, I still don't know. I'm on the fence, but that could be another reason why he waited so long to tell her, is that Laci could show up and everything's back on course.
If he's innocent and she went missing, whatever happened to her, she would have been found, and the family could have had a big sigh of relief. His wife is okay, his wife had the baby, and everything is back to normal. And when he thought it would be a good time to bring Amber back into his relationship with her, he could have on his own time. Absolutely, I agree with that.
So thank you for watching and sharing, and do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you will be notified immediately when the next one is uploaded. And as always, if you have a case you think we would be interested in covering, you can submit it to us via the link in the description box. Bye!
Your voice used to keep me warm in the cold of the night.